All right, so here we are. Thank you everyone for coming to the sixth edition of doing a PhD in, and I put it in brackets, technical HCI. I have had some conversation with people what that means, and does it mean that everything else is not technical? And so, no, none of the idea is primarily to bring together faculty who care about building prototypes, testing with potential future users, and but we have a variety of research methods that I think we cover here. And I think the colleagues I've invited today are active in the CHI, also main HCI conference, WIST, UIST, and maybe a few other conferences. So we're going to start with a round of introduction. I'll be your moderator today. I'm Michael Nebeling. I'm at the University of Michigan, an associate professor there. And feel free to join us with video as well, but I do want to keep track of our faculty colleagues. So I'm going to pass over. We'll start from far away. I'm not sure who's the furthest away. Let's start with Missy. Hello, Missy. Missy, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. And I guess I should introduce myself, right? That's
Yeah,
that's
just
where we
say
are.
yes. A warm
Okay.
welcome.
So hi, I'm Missie Smith. I am an assistant professor at Auburn University, which is in Alabama, so the southeastern United States, if you're not familiar. And I just started here, so this is my first semester at Auburn. But prior to that, I was a UX researcher and also a research scientist at Meta in both Reality Labs, the product side, and also Reality Labs research. So I did that for 4 years. And then prior to that, I was an assistant professor at an R2 university. So less research intense university called Oakland University, which is in Michigan. I was there for 2 years. And then before that, I did my PhD at Virginia Tech. And kind of the through line of research for all my work is AR, VR related things. So really, how does augmented reality change the way that people interact with the world around them? And there's kind of a human performance component of that because my traditional training is human factors. And that's probably enough about me.
Good to meet you, Missy. All right, let's meet Emily. Hello, Emily.
Hey folks, I'm Emily Zhang. I graduated from my PhD in May from Cornell Information Science. I'm a postdoc right now at Microsoft Research here in New York City, and in fall of 2025, I'll be a professor at University of Washington in Seattle in the Department of Human-Centered Design and Engineering. Broadly, I think about digital safety, which is a field that sits on the line between HCI and computer security and privacy. A lot of my research thinks about this from a community engaged lens. So how do we do the work of building and securing systems, but take these principles of justice, equity, and community engagement sort of at the forefront? That's the broad strokes version.
It is very cool. So nice to have you here, Emily. Let's meet Jonathan. Hello, Jonathan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jonathan. I'm going to be starting as a professor at the University of Colorado, Boulder in fall 2025 in the information science department. So looking for students to kind of start a new research group with me. And I finished my PhD over the summer at MIT. And I'm currently a postdoc at MIT and a fellow at the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society at Harvard. And my research is about accessibility for blind and low vision folks in data visualization, data analysis, and also the ethics of data collection. So excited to hear your questions.
So as you can tell, we are actually covering quite a good number of really, really important topics. Thank you, Jonathan, for joining us. Farnaz, how are you today? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm very well, thank you. I'm Farnaz Jahanbakhsh. I'm an assistant professor in computer science and engineering at the University of Michigan. I actually joined this year, so I'm fairly new too. I got my PhD from MIT CSEL. I actually overlapped with Jonathan there. And then I did a 1-year postdoc at Stanford HAI, the Human Centered Institute. And I'm a social computing researcher. This means that, in my group, we design and build social computing systems that we expect will have pro-social outcomes. These could be any systems that mediate social interactions, from social media platforms to, I don't know, like dating apps to anything that has a social component in it, right? And basically the kind of design decisions that go into these systems have a very direct impact on the kinds of behaviors that we will see emerge on these systems. So that's, I mean, a lot of things goes into this, how to prototype these systems, and then we test them out with users and see the emergent behaviors.
Super cool. All right. And last but not least, Venkatesh, say hello. Good to meet you.
Hello,
here.
everybody. I'm Venkatesh Potluri. I started as an assistant professor at the University of Michigan this August. I graduated from my PhD this summer from the University of Washington. And broadly, my work intersects accessibility, programming tools, human-centered AI in some ways, and data science tools. So a lot of my work through the course of my PhD looked at making programming tools accessible to expert programmers for domains like user interface design, physical computing, and data science. And increasingly, I'm now looking at going deeper into data science tool accessibility, in parallel also looking at AI-based assistive technology and how can we use rapidly adopted technologies like generative AI to increase accessibility. My research involves a mixture of data-driven studies, qualitative and quantitative methods, sometimes autoethnographies, and I care a lot about real-world impact. And so I often find the opportunity to make the research that me and my team does available for everybody to use through integrations into products like IDE extensions or open source code repositories.
That's right. And you guys, you came here all prepared. We have, in just a matter of 7 minutes, met all of you. We've heard about your research interests. So that's very cool. So we are still in the first block, which is the welcome block. And I like to ask this question, and it is not an easy one necessarily, and also not everybody has to answer it. But one question, and this also how you answer this question may change over the course of your tenure track or professorship, let's say. So what do you think what type of student do you think you work well with? Are you looking for some specific profile? Are you like open to whatever? What can you tell us about yourself, reflecting on how you recruit as an opening big question? Who would like to try to answer this one?
I can go.
Nobody?
I can go.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's go.
I mean, I can go because I have had experience with one round of recruiting, right? Because I did a postdoc and then I could recruit, and I have students now, basically. So for me, because most of my research projects involve building rather, complex systems, I think I'm looking for students with technical background who bring in expertise on system building, but they also have a knack for the social side, for societal impact. I want them to think about that side as well. And I'm also looking for signs that they are a critical thinker and a creative thinker. I'm also looking for signs that they can be independent, of course, as much as independence can be expected of somebody who isn't in grad school yet. And I'm looking for a person who takes initiative. And I did take these criteria into account when I was recruiting my students, and I'm happy with the outcome.
That's cool. Setting a high bar, but I do think it is true. I mean, that's the profile that you think you can work with well. I would have answered it very similarly, not as eloquently, but similarly to you. Who would like to offer their perspective?
This is Venkatesh. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Venkatesh,
No,
and then
yeah,
Missie.
go ahead.
I'll try to be a better moderator. Sorry. So Venkatesh, you go first.
Yeah, I would echo with a lot of the things that Farnaz said. I do a lot of work that involves, building integrations into other tools, or if they're open source and if we can do them. And there are also a lot of open source, GitHub repositories. So, the ability to implement things is definitely something that I would look for, in a student. And more importantly, right, is also what I would like is, and what I enjoy about doing research is the fact that this is not always easy, not always straightforward. So we might not get it in the first go. Sometimes it takes multiple attempts of doing the same thing slightly differently to get what we want to get, right? So to get the outcome that we want. So one of the things that I enjoy doing is this process, right, of not losing patience and like trying the same thing over and over and over and not getting tired of it. So I would hope that the team that I'm going to build would also, enjoy doing this process, right, and brainstorming along the way, and kind of building on top of each other's expertise.
So I hear self-motivation, resilience, not giving up too easily, being excited about hard technical problems. Sometimes you may not necessarily see the research in it, but it just needs to be done in some of the work. I'm not saying I don't want to, diminish any of your work, but I think you wouldn't shy away. Like if somebody told you, I don't think there's a paper, you'll be like, oh, then I'm not going to do it. I think the way I met Venkatesh, he's going to say, it needs to be done. I'm going to do the thing after that.
Yes, you're right about that. I mean, we will make it a paper if it has to be. Otherwise, there's there's something that will come. There's something good that will come out of everything that we try.
Cool. Missie, you wanted to add to it.
Yeah, I think my perspective is a little different. And I think that's part of because my background is not computer science. I didn't have programming skills when I, early in my career. And so really the two things that to me are absolutely non-negotiable is curiosity and openness to feedback. And that's because I think if you're curious and you take feedback well, then it might take you longer than if you came in with some of those skills, but I'm confident you can get there. But the most challenging collaborations I've had is where people won't take feedback. And so either they don't value it, or it's just really hard for them to incorporate it. And I think those are the two things that are maybe not skills as much as like characteristics. But I think most of the other challenges can kind of come from, can be overcome. But those are ones that like, I can't train you to receive feedback. I can give it, but I can't, that's something I can't, those are the skills I can't train.
Good point. I think Emily is going to, this is a good round of discussion. Let's do Emily, and then we have actually had everyone. So Jonathan after that. Emily, now to you.
Sure, yeah. I was going to plus one what Missy said. I think for folks who maybe don't have a formal computer science background, I want to say like prototyping means many things in HCI, and there's lots of work that we can do that advances the concepts that we're looking at that don't necessarily require straight up building a gigantic system. Of course, a lot of the work that is most exciting will involve actually deploying things, but I think that I just don't want students who maybe haven't worked formally as a software engineer to feel like they can't do a PhD in this, because there's absolutely room for other skills and competencies too. For me, something I'm really looking for, and something that I think is pretty important to students that I work with, you're signing up to basically contribute to the literature and write for 5 years and hopefully a long career after that. And I think, for me, this is not like I'm hiring a software engineer. This is like I'm hiring someone who wants to think about themes and write contributions to a large body of work. And so I think just basically being curious about our specific field and the literature in it, like reading papers, following the discourse, all of that stuff. You don't have to be that deep into academic Blue Sky or Twitter, wherever it is, but having a sense that like that is what we are doing here is pretty important to me. Yeah, I'll stop there.
I agree, Jonathan.
Yeah, I really like all these points raised. I'll answer in terms of like, I think there's a type of scholar that I'm like trying to help create, to Emily's point. Like, especially in the information science department where, I'm a researcher thinking about design, but there's a lot of people around who are, thinking critically about like the assumptions that go into systems that we create. And so I'm really hoping to like train students to think broadly across both like these broader socio-technical ideas and then like how we put them into practice into systems. And so I don't think that necessarily implies a specific background coming in, but I think it requires like an openness to like this kind of broad thinking and skill building. Yeah.
So I think that's actually all. This is true for all of you. I think there's a strong agreement among all of you. We are looking for some creative spirit, somebody who thinks critically, not just a hacker. whatever that means. And so I think this is a theme. So I'm gonna be provocative before we go into the next one. As preparation for application materials, this is going to be our next block, on our first block really. So I'm going to say something potentially shocking for our PhD students here, but recruiting from a faculty perspective, I would say is essentially a risk management. It's a risk assessment and a risk management. And and this is on both sides, not just on the faculty side, but also on our side, we're assessing the potential of mentoring successfully somebody through the program. We understand that there is a growth mindset here. Like we actually want to be able to see whether you can grow, which goes back to this idea of responding to feedback, I think. So is it the right way to think about recruitment from faculty perspective? Is risk assessment part of what you do, or would you push back, Michael? No. So how do you think about this right now in your stage of your career, tenure track? You have things you have to accomplish, and you are looking for PhD students that work with you towards those goals. How would you navigate this?
I agree with that statement. I mean, I think like as an assistant professor, you have to get tenure. Part of that is graduating students. And so to me, the risk is working with a student and investing a lot in a student who doesn't graduate or who doesn't produce anything for any reason. And so from my perspective, that's why to me, feedback is so important, because I think like we can work there together, but it's an effort on both sides. So like if the student doesn't really want it, isn't really trying, then neither of us are going to get there. But it's a big risk for me too, because currently my fate is tied to the students that I work with earliest.
Yeah, we are put on the kind of like on the spot. Emily, did you want to also add to this, or I may have misinterpreted? No problem if you don't want to add. But maybe you want to be a counter position.
Oh no, I mean, I'm happy to add. I was going to echo a little bit. I think it's worth asking also, if I think about like the first student that I'll take on, that's a pretty big deal relative to say like student, 3, 4, 5. And so for me, recruiting this year for my first students, I think there are some things that I'll emphasize more from a risk management perspective. Honestly, a lot of it is Missy mentioned sort of curiosity and sort of work skills and time management, stuff like that. Just those basics, like we're going to be colleagues, I think more than I'm going to be sort of like a boss. Yeah, exactly. So I'm picking a good colleague. And I think for a first student, willingness to sort of mutually learn, as I'm navigating sort of a new structure, a new university too, is something that's pretty important to me. From the other side, I was going to mention also, I think that a lot of folks have mentioned to me that like co-advising or some sort of advisorship position where the more junior professor has a lot of concrete help in managing the student can also be a way to manage that risk. So I think it's up to both the student and the potential advisor to think about ways to mutually manage risk there.
I do think so. I think co-advising is a really good thing. I think I also like peer level co-advising. I think I favor it over senior and junior, because it creates also even worse dynamic, like interpersonal dynamics sometimes. So this is just my perspective out of my own experience, and maybe it goes more like as a word of advice to you, my friends, rather than But anyway, I think PhD students should also consider that co-supervision is a real thing, and they should potentially even think about combinations of faculty. So we're entering the block of application materials. Our students would like some practical advice here. They're very concerned about producing these compelling materials for us. And so there is a theme. There's some very specific things, but like there is this theme. What out of the things that they have to produce, CV, potentially publications to convince us, and a statement of purpose, and a personal statement, and grades, and CS degree or not. What? So here's a question: how many? So I'm skipping the first part of the question. What strategies do you use as faculty to get to know the applicant? So, for example, are there materials that you prioritize? Is the statement of purpose very important to you? I often read, the first thing I open is actually the letters of recommendation before I read anything else. But this might be a unique or maybe even the wrong approach. But like, I'm looking for signals, trusted colleagues. So I really pay a lot of attention to letters of recommendation. But how would you even think about what's the most important type of material to you, and how much time do you spend, or do you think you will spend on reviewing this? Is actually the question that we were asked. Who would like to take this one on?
I
This
can
is
go.
Venkatesh. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think I think I tend to start reviewing, or like I would like to start reviewing with like someone's statement of purpose, and because that's kind of it's the equivalent way of asynchronously the applicant talking to me about who they are, right? And then that's definitely something that I read very carefully and read very closely, because that to me speaks to what have they done, or what kind of research would they like to do, and are our ideas even very, very like even slightly overlapping, right? Like not just ideas exactly, but more so like are our approaches to research, or what do we mean by research, right? Are those things overlapping even, right? And then of course the letters of recommendation that sometimes to speak a lot about the applicant's work and skills and so on. They are a good signal to me. And then the CV, right? And where I would hope that the statement tells me more than what the CV of the person would. And there are other small signals that I would look for that would make me happy if and honestly would make the process of reviewing something easier if someone had a nice accessible document, right? Because with good structure and good image descriptions, if there are images and so on, that just shows that the applicant cares about accessibility already and is putting in that effort, right?
Okay, cool. Farnaz, you wanted to add?
Yeah, sure. I agree that the letters are also very important to me. And like sometimes I actually see that some letters are aren't saying much, and because of that then I would have to like weigh the SOP more, especially sometimes like the letters are from outside the US, and because I'm not familiar with the norms of letter writing from that particular area, then of course I don't know how the letters should be calibrated, and of course then I also have to weigh the SOP much more. There in the SOP I actually look for their experience having done research. Of course, they don't need to really have published per se, but I would love to get a sense of if they have been involved in research before. And I'm not just looking for, here's what we did, rather what it is that you exactly did, and not even just that, not just the execution part of it, but rather why, basically the questions that could give me a sense of your abilities to engage in critical thinking, right? In creative thinking. And these are the questions that I also try to get answers to during interviews. And I'm happy to talk about the interviews as well, but I don't know if we're there yet.
Talk about interviews later block, so forward
Sure, okay.
reference.
Okay.
Cool.
All right, yeah.
Jonathan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'll say more about the statement, because I think for the people on this call, like that's the part that they have the most control over, right? And I think one thing that's on my mind when I'm reading statements is like, what is this person's like self-narrative of why they want to do a PhD, right? Because I think a mistake, I think people sometimes make is focusing too much, like Farnaz said, on kind of listing accomplishments, but I'm kind of trying to see like why this person wants to do a PhD, like, at this particular moment in their career, like what are they hoping to get out of it? And what they think like my program or like working with me might be able to offer them, right? So I want to know like if I can actually offer what they're looking for.
Yeah. And by the way, also good to see Georgia just there for a second. So I usually run this in blocks, and then the last big block will be Q&A. So where we actually take questions from you guys. But if there is anything right now that you feel like topically should be inserted, you could also just paste it in the chat. I am monitoring the chat. But otherwise, we would do, I just collect faculty perspectives right now, and we'll have a block of Q&A in the last 15. So thank you, Jonathan, for that perspective. I have so I agree with you. It's obviously the one thing that our applicants have the most control over. I usually advise navigating this kind of like demonstrating this flexibility. So none of that is set in stone. These are just examples of research I'm excited about. And I advise this way because I have had a kind of like a misconception I've seen on both faculty side and student side, which is sometimes there is a tendency to take the statement of purpose too literally, in the sense that sometimes students believe that the project or ideas that described in there is also what we hired them for, and this is really the project they're going to do. And then on the faculty side is like, it raised questions when it was very convincing and firm, when they actually mentioned populations that maybe faculty haven't previously engaged with, like how flexible would the student be? What if we change this topic a little bit? And so that's why I advise for this flexibility and to basically treat things as examples of research you're very excited about, rather than this is my purpose and this is the thing I'm going to do. And if you don't want me, then screw you. So how is this also the mental model that you associate with statement of purpose, or would you double down on, no, it's really about identity and who you want to be as a scientist? Missy, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a risk either way. So I would say, like, if the reason that you're doing that work, if the reason you want to do a PhD is to do this one particular thing, you need to find the person that does it. But also you have to be open to the fact that that's probably not most people. And so like I have declined working with students that are here at Auburn because they have this super crystal clear idea of what they want to do, and I can't help them. It's not what I do. And so, I mean, I'm coming from the perspective of like, if I'm advising someone, I need to be able to help them. And if I don't know about that space, like, and it's not a space that I'm planning on getting into, then it's like, I'm not the right person. So I think, to me, if that's the reason that you're applying to grad school, I think it's fair to stick by your guns, but you also have to recognize that not everyone will want to work with you, because that may not be a place that they can really help. So I think it's just a trade-off of like, how tied are you to it? And if you're very tied to that space, then it is helpful to be honest, because then like you're ruling out people that don't do that work that might not be a good fit. So I think it's about like
both ways, yeah.
Yeah, are you doing it because like you think it's really cool and exciting, but you're open, or are you doing it because that is the only path that you want to take? And that's something that you have to kind of get clarity on with yourself as you're writing those documents.
Yeah, good points. Did anybody else want to add anything to this current big question? Okay, I think that is good. I think, yeah, so this two-way thing also applies to the interview thing. Before we do interviews, let's see, there was another question I think I wanted to also throw into the round. I promised I would ask. So there is really this theme, there is a little bit of anxiety among the applicants. So it is often on the, I don't have publications, other peers have many more publications. Should I put my stuff quickly on archive even though it's not published yet? Is this more convincing? Strategies to convince you of research potential. What would you, for example, is doing a late breaking work just in time for Kai so that we get something onto the CV? Are these important signifiers to you, like the publication record? Or so I always advise to focus on the things you have actually contributed to. You are currently learning, doing. I don't care whether it's published or not. So tell me more about what you're actually interested in and what you're actually contributing to the work. And don't just say, I led this paper, that paper, because being first author on a paper can mean a lot of different things. So what advice would you give? What's the one thing we can do to get our statement of purpose in the best possible shape? If we could just quickly do like a quick round of feedback. You probably review a lot right now and give feedback to your students and others. So is there a common thing, a common tip that you give your students to brush up statement of purpose? Something that comes to mind quickly?
Yeah, this is Venkatesh, if I may jump in. So a few things, right? At a very high level, I would expect a statement of purpose to have, and like I would expect the writer of the statement to be honest and to be clear, right? And communicate, tell a story, right? It's not about the number of papers. It's not about whether a paper has been published or submitted or not, right? It's if the research has happened, I would like to know what did you do in this research project? How did it shape your thinking, right? As to what you want to do. If it did, if it didn't, that's fine, right? There's no need to force it. But sometimes if we reflect carefully, there is probably something that we learn from every experience that we have, and it may be helpful to, surface that. And this is another place where other material that are a part of the application could also come into play, such as letters. And that's another way in which the research potential could be demonstrated, right? Even though the paper, quote unquote, has not been published or submitted.
All right, cool, Venkatesh. I see, I forgot the order, but I think Emily may have been slightly, I mean, you were shown first, it's wrong, okay?
It's Missie.
Missy? Okay, it shows Emily first. It doesn't keep track of who raised their hand first. Missy, sorry. I was just going through the questions from our students.
I'm unoffended, and I would have been okay if Emily jumped me. But
Okay.
the thing that I kept kind of coming back to, and I think it's in line even kind of with some of maybe what Jonathan said earlier, but it's just about uniqueness. What makes you unique? Why are you what's your why for this? And the reason for that is because there's different types of researchers. You can always find somebody that's published more than you. There's different types of some people have done more prototyping than you. Some people are more involved than you. Like there's always that's more of something. And so I don't care about those things, but I care like, who are you and why are you, what's like unique about you that makes you a really strong candidate? And that doesn't have to look like other paths. And I think that's also something, if you're not sure, but you're getting encouraged to apply to graduate school, like ask those people encouraging you why, and try to figure out like what's that common thread. But really it just comes down to, why, like what makes you unique, because that's the thing that nobody else can have in their application.
That's a cool tip. I mean, ask your advisor. Cool. So now Emily and Jonathan, it's down to you two. Which one was first?
Yeah, I would plus one what folks just said. For me, when I'm reading a statement, this is gonna sound bad. I'm looking for you to be like a little critical about your methods, if that makes sense. Because I feel like that's like a really important research skill. There are some SOPs that come off as like, I did this amazing machine learning class project and beat the AUC by like 0.5%. And look, I'm a qualified machine learning researcher now. And that's fine. That shows me that you did well in a class. But the next level thing is, okay, what did that teach you about evaluation? Or like, what did that teach you about this method that you think is research interesting? And that kind of like next level insight, I find often to be a bit of a failure mode in an SOP.
Okay, cool. And Jonathan? Thank you, Emily.
Yeah, just to the original point, I like had no publications when I was applying to PhDs, so don't feel like that's a requirement. I will say that like the goal of talking about your prior work is not necessarily to like show quantity, but like to give like examples that like illuminate the way that you think and like what your interests are. So I guess to like package that concretely as advice, like when you talk about a thing that you did, make sure to also like, explain like if it was a group thing, like what you contributed, maybe like what you learned from it, and then like tie it to kind of like the current state of your interest and like why you're pursuing a PhD.
That's cool. Good story crafting advice here. Farnaz, what did you want to say?
Yeah, this is basically just a reiteration of things that others have said already. But yeah, I'm not looking for publications per se. And I think to me, actually, you talking about how you drove insights on a complex problem is worth a lot more than you giving me a laundry list of your publications.
Okay. All right. Something our students care a lot about logistics because they are, of course, really into writing these SOPs. And I am curious how you potentially scan SOPs. So when they do, say they understand that they describe their profile, maybe the profile is roughly the same for every school, but then maybe when they send to UW, they would emphasize Emily and write like a paragraph for Emily, and then they do the other version for Jonathan at Boulder, they would, so the component that is the personalized, so we all understand there is a lot of replication and effort. I sometimes open, especially letter writers, and I read the wrong university because they just forgot to update this. So question for you, how important as part of the SOP is do you look for where do they mention me, and how early do they mention me? Because I have noticed among faculty colleagues that a student may end up more like, this seems to be more aligned with that other colleague because they mentioned them first and I mentioned later, and I don't want to overstep and blah, blah. So these internal politics that our students are not always aware of. So how do you think about this? I think Emily was first this time, so don't say no, just say yes.
You're right. You got the order right this time. This is my like extremely direct answer. I don't really care where or in what capacity you mention me in your statement. Honestly, like I think it's like, let's take your example, right? If I read your statement and you wanted to work on the ethics of data collection and accessibility and visualization, but you're applying to University of Washington, I'm gonna be like, no, you should be applying to my friend Jonathan at Boulder. And there's like nothing you can do in the 2 to 3 sentences you have of space to devote to me at UW to convince me that I'm a better fit. And so the honest, like, sort of market success thing for me to do is just be like, oh, that's nice, and then just tell Jonathan, hey, I read this cool statement that's obviously for you. I think like if you hit keywords that are remotely close, it's up to me to read the actual statement and be like, is this person a fit?
Yeah.
That's my take.
Missie, it says Missie here. I hope it's right.
We'll go with it. Yeah, and I think kind of building off of that, like I didn't know when I applied to PhD programs, I didn't know actually the faculty that I worked with wasn't there yet. So like I couldn't target him. And so I was just like, look, I've been doing physical ergonomics research. That's all that I know. But what I do know is for my PhD, I want to do cognitive. I want to do HCI. And so I didn't know who I wanted to work with. I didn't target any specific person. I just wrote like, here's the work I want to do is in this space, literally anything. That's risky, but also like I didn't know better because we didn't have cool office hours like this to help. But I also think it like showed my openness, it showed my interest, and ultimately it worked out. And so I think if you don't know what faculty you want to target, if you focus on what you want to do, that will help them help you. And similarly, like it's okay if you don't specifically have a thing. I think like there's risks on both sides, but also it's okay to not have like one person super dialed in unless like that is the only reason that you would go to that university.
So it's almost like just describe what you're interested in and maybe tag me, but not necessarily really adjust the text like a crazy super fitting, overfitting kind of. Okay. So that would work.
Yeah.
Farnaz, what would you add to that?
I actually wanted to say the exact opposite.
Okay, let's go.
My take is that fit with faculty is much more important than anything else, including the school. I mean, that's basically how I chose who I wanted to work, or like what I wanted to work on even when I was applying for grad schools, right? So I knew that, this was my interest, this particular area of social computing, building systems was my interest. And there was this faculty who did similar things that interest me. And, that's the group I want to be at. And it also comes back to something you mentioned before, Michael, about kind of risk aversion, right? So at the end of the day, you know that the student is going to be applying to other schools as well, right? And they'll have more choices, right? And they're going to decide who to go with based on the fit. So I would want to also be gauging that fit when I'm reading the SOP.
That is,
Have they done?
true. That is true. Sorry, did I
Yeah,
interrupt?
so basically, no, just like have they done their research about, like what I do? And is that something that interests them as, coming across in their SLP? Basically, that's what I'm trying to get a sense
Yeah.
of.
There's one important other aspect. Thank you for all of your points. Some universities have rotation, like Stanford or UW HCDE. Thank you, Emily, for raising this. And I guess it's in the chat here. I'm just going to read it quickly because I want to go to the interviews block. So one important me-specific wrinkle is what Emily says, but it's not unique to UW HCDE. They do a first-year rotation. So basically, as a PhD program, you will be admitted into the program. You will not be necessarily matched yet. You get to work with a few faculty. And then it's actually an interesting way to ease somebody into the program. It has pros and cons, like with everything, but it's important to know. It's important to know about this. So interviews, let's assume we did successfully with our SOPs. We managed all your tips. Thank you for that. Is there a question that you really like to ask, like that you're proud of because it's so hard or so interesting or so tough, or it creates like having people eat cherries and see what they do with the rest? Like, I don't know, I've heard some interesting, right? So is there a question that you either tell your advisees or that you think would be a good thing to prepare for? And is there also a question that you receive that you value potentially? I don't want everybody to ask the same question, but there's always this awkward moment when faculty ask you, do you have a question for me? And some people make decisions based on that, trust me. If you don't have a question, it's actually not good in some people's minds. So question you like to ask or question you think is actually very useful to get from students. For example, question to get could be on advising style. I think I get that one a lot. So Farnaz, yeah.
Oh, I don't believe in the element of surprise, right? Because usually a lot of people aren't good at, coming up with answers on the spot. So something I do is that I actually tell the students beforehand that I'd like them to talk about the research that they've done. And it's up to them if they want to just like do it very informally. Sometimes they prepare slides even, but I actually don't care much about the research project they do, but rather how they handle questions, how they engage with and answer questions. So I interrupt them a lot and ask them questions. Just that reveals a lot about have they actually thought deeply about this? How are they taking criticism or feedback, right? In general, and a lot of other things that kind of comes through as part of this conversation that we're having.
That's very cool. I use a similar strategy. I think as a student, you should know that it's good to come prepared, but to also be flexible if you don't get to finish your presentation. Did anybody else want to add to this? I feel like you all want to say something. So who would like to go next? Missie, thank you. And then Venkatesh, we go to you after Missie.
Yeah, just to kind of build off of other things, like a question I'm always going to ask is like, why do you want to do a PhD? And I think that goes to, you can address why what's unique about you, but also what's your reasoning for it. Because I think if you're doing a PhD because you can't figure out what else to do with your life, like that's not a great reason. So you need to have a good reason, a good kind of going back to that narrative of like, why this step?
Okay. I find it a tough one because I also think my answer changed actually while I was doing a PhD. So, but it's an interesting question to engage with. For many of these questions, there is no right or wrong answer. It's more like how you take it and how you engage with the question. So, Jonathan, what did you want to add? Actually, sorry, Venkatesh, we had you before. Venkatesh, let's go to you, and then Jonathan.
Yeah. So I think, I would treat the interview phase kind of, like many things, and part of it is kind of like a potential advising meeting, right? Like, am I and the prospective student able to talk to each other and have a nice conversation? And a part of that is understanding why are you excited about working with me to become a scholar, and why am I excited about working with you to kind of advance research and advance science and help you become a scholar, right? And this manifests in a few ways, talking about research ideas, not necessarily, at a very, rough level, brief level even, right? I'm someone who gets very excited about brainstorming meetings, and also I'm okay to be told that this idea might not work for XYZ reasons, where XYZ are like maybe informed or like, you know, thought about a little bit.
Gut feeling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Not that, yeah. So there is like all of these elements that I would like to, you know, understand and also help this applicant understand, right? Is like, what is a conversation with me about research going to look like?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's
it's more
cool. So
open-ended,
they
but
give
something
you-
about
yeah,
research.
that's
Yeah.
cool. And so, Jonathan, I think you also wanted to add to this one, and that will wrap up our faculty panel. Jonathan?
Actually, Venkatesh's was very similar to mine. I was just going to say, you know, in addition to all of the like great things people have said, I just want to like remind applicants that you are also like evaluating us. Like, I think a very important thing is, you know, like that's on my mind is like, do we vibe basically, right? Like, because we're going to have to talk to each other for like the next 6 years, like every week, right? So I think it's very hard to tell from a quick conversation, but I think some of these questions are ways to like surface, like, can we get excited about the same things and things
Yeah.
like
I do think that PhD students also value a lot like how warm the conversation was, and it's harder. It's probably easier to imagine fit when it's warm rather than you were completely destroyed. But there are people who really liked. So you feel like you learn more. Anyway, so I would say even if the meeting ended in what you think was very critical, it actually may not mean that you didn't perform very well. It actually might have been really cool for the faculty. And it's something to be aware of. So Emily, last word is with you.
Yeah, last word. Just plus one to what everyone said about asking after research interest and fit. I'm also just going to ask you what you do for fun. Like this is also just kind of like meeting someone for the first time and just being kind of curious what they're like. And that set of questions to me, as Jonathan put it, it's a vibe check. There's not like a wrong or right answer. It's really just meeting someone that you might potentially work with very closely for 5 years and then the rest of your lives. So
yeah,
there's that
all
aspect
right.
too.
Thank you all. So this was our faculty panel. I hope we touched on most of the questions. I answered many of your questions also in our document. So we open the floor for questions. Anybody who would like to ask a question, can you please raise your hand and I'll try to establish a little bit of an order. If you want anybody particular to answer your question, maybe indicate that. Otherwise, we'll find a good person willing to answer. We have about 12 more minutes, maybe staying a little bit over, but my colleagues may also have to run. So who would like to ask a question into the panel? I mean, Arena is here putting you on this one. You can say hi if you want. You can ask a question if you want, but up to you. But I see you here. Thanks for coming.
I kind of came halfway. So
it's like the professor cold calling you.
so you might have answered some questions that I can't come up with right now.
That's
I guess
totally
like
cool. I think whatever is on your mind, I think that would be cool.
sure. I guess one question I have is, well, what are some important things that you think we should consider when choosing an advisor other than being hands-on or hands-off?
That's a very, very important question. Thank you for that. How do we think about it? Who wants to give it a try? Missie, first hand, 2 seconds. Here we go.
I mean, I think the thing that's really important, because like your fate is tied to your advisor basically forever. And so I say that like I was in academia, I went to industry, I went back to academia. I still needed letters of recommendation from my advisor to apply this year. So it's been, 6 years and I still needed that connection. So I would say not only like, do you like them and think you can work with them, but also do you trust them? Because this is somebody that like a lot of your future career is intertwined with. And if it's somebody that, you don't have a great feeling about, like that's a space where I'd be like, oh, that's a really big risk. So do you trust them and do you think you can work with them?
I agree. I'm also going to add one thing. I'm not sure whether this speaks for everyone, but due to being German, I don't always have the same kind of like, I'm a bit more direct than maybe other colleagues. And then sometimes this can be uncomfortable. And I think this is my problem. I'm pretty sure that my friends here all have their own problems. And so ultimately, is it a zero-sum game, or is there like I think nobody's perfect. I would just say that, especially faculty are also under a lot of pressure. I have not always had the best reactions when I was under pressure, and so everybody's human. So ultimately, what you're looking for here is actually the human behind, not the distinguished professor title or the super duper school. It's really, I think that's what my friends emphasized here. It's really about this connection. It's very hard to feel that connection the first time. I've actually misjudged a lot of things, to be honest. I remember when I came to this university and I had like breakfast with one of the deans, I was like, oh no, this is probably going to be difficult, and turned out to be the strongest supporter of me, and I just didn't get the vibes. And so yeah, I don't know. This first time impression can also be misleading, but anyway. So thank you. This is a really good question. So anybody else?
No, thank you.
And also you did excellently. Okay. Okay, we have also one written question.
Sorry, can I answer that real quick? I thought of
question?
the previous question. Can we
Oh,
jump
yeah,
back? Can we backtrack for a second? Something I would advise folks to look for, I think academia is laden with power dynamics, and it's really important if your advisor is aware of them. Full stop. And like just even that basic awareness can make a huge difference in your PhD. I don't really have a great way to like test for it, but I think that can be a real determiner of your experience.
I would echo this. I would also say that awareness is what is important. They may not be the best person to address the issue. So I have a lot of female students. We discuss a lot the increased difficulty, gender dynamics is a big thing, and I hear them. I'm on their side. I always reach out to female faculty colleagues to also have a chat with them. I don't presume that I fully understand everything. I'm aware, so I'm not the person who can necessarily solve. Actually, I'm not sure whether it can be solved, but like, I just feel like they need to be able to listen to you and hear you, and they may not necessarily have the answer directly themselves, but this openness to engaging with it, that's what you're looking for. That's what I would say. And Emily, do you agree? Is it okay to add this, or do you want to push back?
Sorry, do I agree that that awareness is important?
Agree that awareness is really what you're looking for? It doesn't necessarily have to be that they know the answer to these problems, but at least that they are willing to engage. I think it's a very different.
Yeah. No, I got you. I would say awareness is the bare minimum. And it's actually kind of important to hit that minimum. Like it's absolutely like an effective filter still. And then after that, everything's great. But like I think someone who's aware that because it's hard, right? Like you're an advisor is in charge of, as Missy put it, like your entire career going forward. And so just simply awareness of power structure and how to navigate them will take you pretty far. But I think that's a minimum that we should definitely make sure to hit. And after that, we as an entire field are trying to work to be better. So.
All right. All right, Sean, you raised your hand. Here we go. Thank you for.
Hi, my name is Sean. I'm from Virginia Tech. Hi, Missy. I know you on LinkedIn, but we never met before. But I'm a PhD student in Virginia Tech. But I think this question might be beneficial for all of people. So what would you expect from a PhD student when they graduate?
Oh, okay, cool. Good perspective. Who has I may not see all the questions because I'm moving this chat window around. Maybe I'll put it here. So what do we expect of our PhD students when they graduate? So the first thing I would say is we're looking for success. So we're looking to enable you to be successful, but that doesn't mean that you'll be a professor. I just say that because I think this is not the only thing we train for. I also think that PhD is not the they used to be this answer. You should only do a PhD if you want to be a professor. I also disagree with that. And so I will just say that, get that out of the way. Anything else that you guys think about? Success for our PhD students.
This is Venkatesh.
Venkatesh,
thinking,
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, forward, just generally, right? I think this is like one of the things is, feeling confident and about being an independent researcher, right? Like that's the whole point. One of the, big pictures of the training here that all of us go through when we do our PhDs is to become independent researchers, no matter, as Michael said, right? No matter what career path you choose, if it's research, if it's not, that's completely fine, right? That's totally fine. Basically, what I would like for my future students to have would be to find careers that they are happy with and they can be successful in. And if it's research, feel comfortable and confident that they can be independent researchers.
Right. Well, Missie, thank you, Venkatesh.
Yeah, I think you covered a lot of what I was going to say, but I kind of think of it as like you need to be independent researcher. You also just need to be like setting your own goals. And so like early on, you maybe don't know all the opportunities that exist. And so part of my job, as I view it, is to train you to do good science, but also to understand like how to find your own opportunities and to expand beyond what I can do for you. So to me, there's that, like, in addition to what he said about being an independent thinker, it's like being an independent architect of your career, because I'll tell you what I know about, but I don't know about everything. And so I'm trying to kind of give you the building blocks that I have and hoping that you can take it further than I could.
Yeah, I think my PhD advisor sometimes said like you're the CEO of your own life kind of thing. And I think this really, this also really speaks to that. So there were, Shirley, did you want to ask us a question? Is that, but it's also cool if you don't have any question right now, but I just see you here on screen.
Did you say Shirley?
Yes, that's what I said.
Okay, hi everyone.
Good to meet you.
I joined pretty late, so I don't know what questions were already answered, but I would just like to learn more about what collaboration looks like for you, and what does it mean? What are some academic and impact goals for each of you? I think I'm trying to learn more about you uniquely, so I can use that knowledge in approaching other people when I'm asking them about their unique goals as well.
That's cool. All right. Who would like to? Missy, is your hand up? Is it new? You're so fast. Missy, go.
I have really strong feelings about collaborations. And that is like, I don't think you should work with people that you don't trust and like. And that's because like collaborations are, another place where there could be power dynamics at play. And so like I have a rule, like I only work with my friends. I won't work with all of my friends. Some of them would not be good collaborators, and I know that. But I'm also like not willing to work with people that I don't really respect and like and trust, because that opens up a lot of potential. So I've gotten more and more rigid with who I will collaborate with as I've gone further. Just because like that's another space where like you introduce a lot of potential risk, as just like picking an advisor. Collaborators are a similar kind of thing.
Yeah. I would even go so far as to suggest that maybe in the beginning of the PhD, it's really about figuring out that what can you do within the cards that you have picked for now, and then what often happens, and I've observed this a few times, is that you get more ambitious, and then it outgrows a little bit the expertise of your primary advisor, but then they feel like, oh, we could add this other person, and that could be interesting. And to be honest, it's sometimes it's also a bit hit and miss. I have had some serious discussions with my PhD students, whether it was a good idea, not necessarily to involve other faculty, but to involve other PhD students and at other institutions, and it creates all kinds of challenges. I do think, though, everything makes you a better future collaborator, it's always a learning experience. It's the one thing I think we can all agree on in this academic setting. What is success? Success is when you learn something new. It may not always be the best learning experience, but you have grown in some way. And collaboration is I find one of the trickiest topics. I would not collaborate for the sake of collaboration. I have also seen it where it actually took apart friendships. It can actually also work again. So very difficult and delicate topic. But I think this is, so we have Shirley raising your, is it from earlier? Yeah.
Yes, I was trying to ask a follow-up question because I am very new to academia and academic politics. and not everyone is as straightforward, transparent, and direct in like you all here. So how do we navigate the power dynamics and not have to tiptoe around asking these questions about collaboration?
So one thing I would say there, you are also you're going to be part of a PhD program, and there are resources within a PhD program. I mean, the primary line of attack is through the advisor, and why that is, that's very important. But it's also, and I appreciate what my colleague said here about the role of us, but to be honest, we don't have full responsibility for you or ownership. Nobody said ownership, but like it sounded like a little bit like we'll be the ones determining the career and stuff. And I think no, because transition to a different advisor there should be a written rule in the PhD program that this is possible, and there should be support to make transitions like that, because sometimes you cannot resolve the conflict, and you have to be sure that the PhD program is aware. A program like Emily's that supports rotation by design might actually be a safer choice in some of these situations. So maybe this comes down to later when you make your list and you got a few offers, and you are actually weighing the risks on each side and the opportunities on each side, and safety. It's kind of like there's no guaranteed success, right? But like there are some variables that maybe you would feel safer, feels less risky, and I think that might be how you might determine a good solution for you there. I'm wondering, so thank you all for coming today. Is there any kind of like last thing that you my faculty panelists here felt like I prepared this for today? I really wanted to throw this into the round before we close the recording. Is there anything like this that you deeply care about, or do you think we covered it? Farnaz?
Can I add just one quick thing to the last thing that you mentioned, or the last question? I think actually talking to the advisor's current students, I mean, I know like a lot of us are actually new. I mean, I do have, one student, but I mean, some might not, but also talking to the other students in the program, even if, they're not, the students of the faculty, can be huge. So please do that. And, people are much more willing to share if you set up a Zoom meeting with them than over email.
And also an advisor might actually offer this.
Yes.
Could also be a signal. Cool. So there's Farnaz's hand. So anyway, then I would say thank you all. We still have this document. If you have other questions, I will actually give you write access again. Thank you all for joining today. This was really fun. Good to hear your insights. Hope this is helpful. I'll upload it to YouTube, I think. And yeah, thank you all. Okay, and have a good day, all of you. Good luck with your applications. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. All the best with your applications.